American colonialism. The colonization generally involves one group or nation establishing control over another territory, often for economic, political, or social reasons. This historically includes exploration, settlement, and exploitation of resources in the colonized area, often resulting in cultural clashes and power struggles between the colonizers and the indigenous population. American colonialism refers to the period when European powers, primarily Great Britain, Spain, France, and the Netherlands, established colonies in what is now known as North and South America. These colonies were established from the late 15th century onward, following the voyages of Christopher Columbus and other explorers. Key aspects of American colonialism include: 1. British colonies. The 13 colonies along the eastern coast of North America were established by the British starting in the early 17th century. These colonies, including Virginia, Massachusetts, New York, and others, were primarily established for economic reasons such as trade, agriculture, and resource extraction. 2. Spanish colonies. Spain established a vast colonial empire in the Americas, including territories in present-day Mexico, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. The Spanish colonies were centered around extracting resources like gold and silver and were heavily influenced by the encomienda system, which exploited indigenous labor. 3. French and Dutch colonies. The French and Dutch also established colonies in North America, primarily for fur trading and agricultural purposes. The French claimed territories in Canada and areas around the Mississippi River, while the Dutch settled in parts of present-day New York. 4. Impact on indigenous populations. American colonialism had devastating effects on indigenous populations. Colonizers brought diseases, warfare, and displacement that led to the decline of many indigenous cultures and populations. The imposition of European systems of governance and land ownership disrupted traditional indigenous ways of life. 5. Colonial resistance and independence movements. Over time, resistance to colonial rule grew, leading to movements for independence. This culminated in the American Revolutionary War, resulting in the 13 colonies breaking away from British rule and forming the United States of America. Advantages of American colonialism through various dimensions. 1. Economic dimension. Resource extraction. American colonies provided access to valuable resources such as minerals, timber, agricultural products, and lucrative trade routes, contributing to the economic prosperity of the colonizing powers. Market expansion. Colonies served as markets for manufactured goods from the colonizers, creating new avenues for trade and economic growth. 2. Infrastructure dimension. Transportation networks. Colonizers developed transportation infrastructure like roads, railways, and ports in colonies to facilitate the movement of goods, which also had some localized benefits in terms of improved connectivity. Administrative structures. Establishment of administrative systems aided in governance and law enforcement, albeit primarily serving colonial interests. 3. Technological dimension. Technological transfer. While primarily serving the interests of the colonizers, some technological advancements like agricultural techniques or industrial processes were introduced to colonies, which, to some extent, influenced local practices. 4. Cultural dimension. Cultural exchange. Colonization brought about cultural exchange between colonizers and indigenous populations, introducing new languages, religions, and ideas that, albeit asymmetrically, influenced local cultures. 5. Political dimension. Institutional legacy. The establishment of colonial governments introduced certain administrative and legal systems that, while serving the interests of the colonizers, laid the groundwork for future political structures in post-colonial societies. Despite these perceived advantages, it's crucial to acknowledge that these dimensions of colonialism were often intertwined with exploitation, cultural suppression, displacement, and inequality, resulting in profound and lasting harm to indigenous populations and their societies. The benefits derived from colonialism were typically asymmetrical, disproportionately favoring the colonizers and often at the expense of the colonized peoples. Cons. American colonialism had significant negative impacts on indigenous populations and the territories colonized by European powers. Here are some cons of American colonialism. 1. Displacement and land loss. Example: the Trail of Tears, a forced relocation policy in the 1830s by the United States government, resulted in the removal of thousands of Native American tribes, notably the Cherokee, from their ancestral lands in the Southeast to territories west of the Mississippi River, causing immense suffering, loss of life, and the disruption of indigenous communities. 2. Cultural suppression and assimilation. Example: the imposition of boarding schools by the U.S. government, like the Carlisle Indian Industrial School, aimed to assimilate Native American children into Euro-American culture by forcibly separating them from their families, suppressing indigenous languages and cultural practices, leading to trauma and loss of cultural identity. 3. Resource exploitation and economic inequality. Example: the Dawes Act of 1887 in the United States led to the allotment of Native American lands to individuals, resulting in the loss of communal land ownership, further dispossession of indigenous territories, and the exploitation of natural resources for the benefit of non-indigenous settlers. 4. Health decline and population loss. Example: introduction of diseases like smallpox and measles by European settlers in the Americas resulted in catastrophic population declines among indigenous communities due to lack of immunity, significantly reducing their numbers and devastating their societies. 5. Loss of sovereignty and political suppression. Example: the systematic erosion of tribal sovereignty through various policies and treaties, such as the Indian Removal Act of 1830, undermined the political autonomy of Native American nations and led to their subjugation under U.S. federal authority. 6. Legacy of injustice and ongoing challenges. Example: contemporary issues faced by Native American communities, including high rates of poverty, inadequate access to healthcare and education, and social disparities, stem from the historical injustices and systemic discrimination perpetuated by American colonialism. Cause and effect of colonialism. The causes and effects of American colonialism are interconnected and have had far-reaching consequences. Here's an overview of the cause and effect relationship. Causes of American colonialism. 1. Economic motives. European powers sought new trade routes, resources, and markets for their goods, leading to exploration and colonization of the Americas to secure economic advantages. 2. Geopolitical ambitions. Nations vied for territorial expansion and geopolitical dominance, leading to the establishment of colonies in the Americas to increase their power and influence. 3. Cultural and religious factors. European colonial powers aimed to spread their religious beliefs, cultural values, and ideologies to indigenous populations through missions and cultural assimilation. 4. Technological advancements. Advances in navigation, shipbuilding, and weaponry allowed explorers and colonizers to reach and conquer distant lands more effectively. 5. Competition among European powers. Rivalry among European nations for dominance and resources fueled a race for colonization, leading to aggressive colonial expansions in the Americas. Effects of American colonialism. 1. Displacement and land loss. Indigenous populations were forcibly displaced from their lands, leading to the loss of ancestral territories and disruption of communities. 2. Cultural suppression and erasure. Colonization led to the suppression of indigenous languages, traditions, and cultures, resulting in the erosion of cultural identity among indigenous communities. 3. Economic exploitation and inequality. Colonizers exploited natural resources and enforced economic systems that led to disparities and poverty among indigenous populations. 4. Political domination and loss of autonomy. Indigenous political structures were dismantled, and foreign governance systems were imposed, eroding indigenous autonomy and self-governance. 5. Health decline and population loss. Introduction of diseases to which indigenous populations had no immunity led to significant population declines and health crises. 6. Legacy of injustice and ongoing challenges. American colonialism has left a lasting legacy of injustice, trauma, and systemic inequalities, contributing to ongoing challenges faced by indigenous communities in the present day. Key points. Colonization in America, specifically in the context of European exploration and settlement in the Western Hemisphere, involved several distinct phases and processes. 1. Early explorations and contact. Christopher Columbus's voyages in 1492 marked the beginning of European contact with the Americas. Spanish and Portuguese explorers subsequently ventured into the Caribbean, Central America, and South America, seeking wealth, resources, and trade routes. 2. Conquest and Spanish colonization. Spanish conquistadors, like Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro, conquered the Aztec and Inca empires, respectively, in the early 16th century, establishing Spanish colonies in present-day Mexico, Central America, and South America. These colonies aimed at extracting wealth, primarily gold and silver, from the conquered territories. 3. English colonization. English colonization began in the early 17th century with the establishment of permanent settlements, notably Jamestown in 1607 and Plymouth in 1620. The English colonies, mainly along the eastern seaboard, focused on agriculture, trade, and religious freedom. 4. French and Dutch colonies. The French and Dutch established colonies in North America, primarily in regions such as Canada and parts of the present-day United States, focusing on fur trade, fishing, and establishing trade networks with indigenous populations. 5. Expansion and conflict. Colonization led to conflicts between European settlers and indigenous populations over land, resources, and cultural differences. These conflicts, including wars such as King Philip's War and the French and Indian War, shaped colonial relations and territorial expansion. 6. Consolidation and colonial governance. European powers established colonial governments, legal systems, and trade networks, imposing their languages, religions, and cultures on indigenous populations. The colonies developed distinct social, economic, and political structures. 7. The road to independence. Tensions between the colonies and the British government escalated, leading to the American Revolutionary War. The 13 colonies declared independence in 1776, forming the United States of America, marking the end of European colonial rule in the region. Conclusion. The process of colonization in America involved diverse motivations, interactions with indigenous populations, territorial disputes, establishment of colonies, and ultimately, the emergence of independent nations in the Western Hemisphere. Facts. 1. 13 colonies. There were 13 areas along the east coast of America where British people settled and made their own towns and farms. 2. Different jobs. In some places, people fished, built ships, and made things. In others, they grew crops like rice and tobacco using workers brought from Africa. 3. England's rules. England made rules that the colonies could only sell certain things to England and buy things from England. This limited the colonies' freedom to trade with other places. 4. War with France. Britain and France fought for control of land in America. Britain won and took over some French territories in America. 5. Taxes and protests. Britain put taxes on things like paper and tea in the colonies. People got upset because they had no say in making these rules and protested against them. 6. Boston Tea Party. In one protest, people threw tea into the sea to show they didn't like the British taxes on tea. 7. Declaration of Independence. The colonies decided they wanted to be independent and wrote a paper called the Declaration of Independence to say they didn't want to be ruled by Britain anymore. 8. American Revolution. This was a big war between the colonies and Britain. The colonies won, and this war led to the birth of the United States as an independent country.